had to perform a little bit of an exorcism on Restream. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Um, so y'all, we are back at it again. And as I fiddle with my headset, don't mind me because apparently my headset is dead. I don't know. Anyway, um, demons in the software, guys. Demons in the software. So we are back at it again for Let It Rip, and guys, this time I think all of I'm real interested to see where exactly this whole thing goes because I am I've got something that I need to get off my chest here. Um, so I think we're all in our own ways acquainted with this idea of having fandoms, right? Being fans of things that are outside of the Christian sphere, right? Secular stuff, if you will. And it's one of those things. It can get the subject of Christians being into different things, TV shows, movies, music, whatever. They can get spicy, right? That can turn into kind of a weird conversation pretty quick. And so I want to pose this question to y'all, and guys, good morning in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Say hi to let us know where you're tuning in from. And I want to hear from you guys. Obviously we talk about this all the time. Chime in the comments so that way we can hear where you guys are at and let us know what are some of your guys' fandoms? What are you guys into? Movies, music, all of that kind of stuff. What are some of your interests? But so what do you guys make of this idea of Christians being able to be into um different TV shows, movies, music, all of that kind of stuff? Do you think that it's okay? And what do you guys think the line is? And I purposefully left that last question vague because I want to see where you guys go with it. Take what the line is as you will. Go with it.
It's okay for Christians to have fandom.
Yeah. You know what? I don't. It's one of those, what do they call them? Guilty pleasures, right? You do it, but you don't talk about it. you don't necessarily tell anybody that, unless they are a fan of it too. And so you kind of do these things, but I don't know if you really think about, is this right or is this wrong? You think about, well, I like this, and it's nobody else's business, maybe.
Right.
You said it. So I'll give you one of mine, and it's not a bad one. We'll ramp up to the ones that could be considered questionable. We'll ramp up to that as we get into the conversation. But I like docu series, and
Right.
I watch a lot of the true crime type stuff where they're actually going through court cases, and I torture myself looking at our justice system and just cringe the whole time I'm watching it, but I keep watching it, right? And so It's like, why are you watching this? And for some reason I have them all listed on my Netflix, and so they pop up, they suggest them for me, and so I get all of the docu-series on court cases and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, well, why? So that's not, to me, that's not really a, but it's something that I watch and I can binge watch it. So yeah, I'll just start there and then let's see where this goes.
Yeah, you see, it's such a general, man, I think it's spectrum, but it really is, because I can hit gaming, TV shows. I mean, so much, especially being a gamer. We just have fandoms. That's what you do. If you multiplayer, I mean, I'll just throw a couple out. Call of Duty, that's a fandom.
Yep.
Apex, fandom. Kingdom Hearts, fandom, one of my favorite communities that can be actually weirdly toxic at times. We know about Call of Duty and Apex, how bad that can be. It's a sense of belonging, in a sense, when you like something, that you feel connected to this bigger culture, right? It's like I just named a couple. I haven't even gotten to anime. Oh my god, I haven't even gotten to like anime and things like that. And so I just think you feel that. I think the hard part is, if you're asking if it's right or wrong, it's loaded. That's a loaded question, because is it wrong to be connected to other human beings and having similar interests? I don't think God's going to beef with you, but is it wrong to be toxic and to have certain beliefs and gain the different type of ways of thinking? I don't know. It depends where the bat swings, And so I agree with Ant, is that, that guilty pleasure. You like it, I with Kingdom Hearts is on the spur of getting a lot of hype again, because they got a new mobile game, and what that means is probably gonna be getting a flood of Kingdom Hearts news, which leads to Kingdom Hearts 4. There's a sense of proudness to be a part of this community, And I remember when I was playing Apex heavily, there was a sense of proudness to feel that you knew news and to have these certain buzzwords. But it didn't feel good when you're on the game and you're being a toxic bot and cussing people out. You're like, I don't think that's Jesus, bro. I don't think that's what this space is intended for. But you feel that belonging. So I don't want to ramble on, but absolutely.
So obviously, I cannot bury the lead and be like, I don't know. I can't. I'm not really. I don't know about this whole fandom thing. Like, literally, you can see my background. So here's the thing, right? I don't. So I come from this, from the angle of being a fan of things far before being a Christian. And so in my mind, it didn't really, like, when I entered into the Christian sphere, I just kind of brought my fandoms with me. Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, I don't see, all right. So don't worry, guys. I'm gonna take the heat for all of us. Nobody else is gonna. I'm gonna jump right out there and throw myself into the line of fire. Dude, if we got stuff like movies like God's Not Dead out here, criminal or villainizing non-believers as if they're terrible human beings and evil and all of that kind of stuff. How is that any better than just like liking something like a video game or a movie or something along those lines? What, just because it's God flavored? That's more heretical than any of these other video games or movies or anything else like that, because at least these things aren't trying to be God flavored. I'm just saying. So when you consider this idea of faith in fandom, why are we so scared to bring our faith into our fandom and ask bigger questions and all of those kinds of things, and ask, okay, so there are tons. I am a huge sci-fi fan. right? I am a huge fan of things like Star Trek and all of that. Gene
Yeah.
Roddenberry was famously super anti-religion. Like, he was a staunch atheist and would very openly, like, anytime religion came up, there's a famous episode of Star Trek TNG from early on in the series where Picard is talking about we finally brought humanity out of the Stone Age, where they believed in myth and superstition and all of that, referencing religion. You dare tell me to take them back to that point when there was a people group that had a belief system, and that kind of sticks out as one of the big tentpole examples of how Roddenberry would write the show and all of that. And okay, but what does that, why can't we take that and then jump and ask the question, well, is religion bad? Does this have a negative effect on mankind? All of that kind of stuff. That doesn't sacrifice our own belief system just because we take in something that has an opinion or a perspective that's counter to ours.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess for me, I have a hard time. I have a hard time when just accepting something is God flavored if the messaging is still bad. Like, if the messaging is still off from center, I can't, I personally cannot take in that Christian content and say, oh, it's cool because it's God flavored, regardless of whether or not like the messaging is like it's God flavored. So good. Like, so I'll give one more example, not to dominate the conversation, but I'll give one more example. Again, spicy. I made a post yesterday, stirred up some controversy a little bit and all of that. I said that The Chosen is super overrated. Here's the thing. Oh, he's like, oh,
Went there.
yeah. So, I will give it credit. It is the least pretty boy Jesus out of all of them. Out of all of the depictions that you could think of over the last, I don't know, what's it been since The Passion came out, 20 years, something like that. It's the least pretty boy Jesus out of all of them, but it's still pretty boy Jesus. It's almost like all of these depictions of biblical accounts in live action fall short, because in the words of the great philosopher Mike Hauser, the book was better. You got to check out the post in order to get the joke that I just made. Anyway, so it's I don't understand if we're so focused on things that, like, take the biblical canon and go here, there, and everywhere with it. How is that any better than watching something that doesn't have anything to do with biblical canon? Because I would argue the thing that takes the biblical canon here, there, and everywhere doesn't have anything to do with the biblical canon in the first place.
Yeah, I think that this is very nuanced, and as you said, it's multi-layered, multifaceted. Because I think, that's one take on it. I think another take on it, I think for me, when I deal with this, it's really about, does this put me in a position where I'm compromising my values? Like, I was always a big movie fan, huge movie fan. There's a point where, we were still watching movies on DVD, right? And I had, I don't know, 500-600 DVDs in categorized shelves with series you know, had the whole Star Wars series, had the whole this, whatever series there was. I never bought a movie and didn't buy the entire series. You know, I had to have the whole thing so that, and then I had my movies grouped by actors. So I had all of my Stallone movies, all of my Denzel Washington movies, all of my Wesley Snipes movies, all of my Kurt Russell movies, all of my, you know, whatever they had, you know, Danny Glover, I had all his movies, Mel Gibson, all Bruce Willis, all his movies. I just, everything had to be categorized by, you know, and so when we go in, pull a movie, you couldn't just watch that movie because there's a whole section to these movies, right? You know, and I remember, you know, really starting back up to really walk with the Lord, rededicate my life, start walking with the Lord. And I started going through my movies. And I had some stuff on my shelf that was like, oh man, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. There's nothing but cussing, violence, and nudity all throughout this entire movie. And I can't keep watching this, right? And I remember getting rid of I don't know, about 200-300 movies. And one of my best friends, who was a movie guy with me, we would go shopping together. He couldn't believe it. He said, "You're really gonna get rid of that? That's gold right there. You're gonna get it." It's like, I'm not gonna watch it anymore, so I might as well get rid of it, you know, because I'm not gonna watch it anymore. And so when it comes down to certain things, I think there's a nuance to it that when I'm watching something, you know, is it actually a problem for me? Not that I'm putting it off on anybody else or saying, hey, you shouldn't watch this or you should watch this. That's kind of an area I kind of stay out of, because I end up saying to them the same thing I say to me. What does this do to you? Does this put you in a place where you're tempted? Does this put you in a place where, you know, you're feeding yourself with things that are going to cause you to act out differently or change the way you behave or change your focus or your perception? And so when it comes down to a lot of this stuff in music, I put in the same category. I did the same thing with my music. I went through all my music. I was like, oh, I can't be playing this. This does not give me, you know, good focus. This actually keeps me in a place where I'm stuck in the past. I'm stuck in bad behavior. I'm stuck in things that bad memories. And so a lot of that stuff had to go. And it was a lot. I mean, a lot, because I had because I was just a weirdo when it came down to collecting movies, music, huge, you know, collections of stuff. And so going through those collections and getting rid of stuff, people were looking at me like, you're crazy. Why would you even do that? You know? And I said, well, this is about me. I'm not telling you to go do it. I'm saying this is what I have to do, you know, or this is for me. And so that's one of the areas where I say there's a nuance for the individual in trying to figure out, if I'm a fan of this, should I be, from my own personal perspective? That's not even talking about from what other people would perceive of
me. I'll go ahead and get in there because, truthfully enough, this is right up my my alley, being a gamer and sharing my faith through gaming. So if you would forgive me as I indulge on my transition to even doing what I'm doing right now with my ministry that the Lord has given me through gaming. Yeah, for me, I think I'm a lot like you guys. I think for me, you didn't combine the two. Your faith and your fandom were separate. That's, I think, a lot of times how I thought about gaming, anime, period. They're separate things. So forgive me if some of you might find this on the rocky territory, on scandalous, and I can't believe you said that. I'm just giving you a little disclaimer now. But yeah, when my boys came over, we play games. I'm like, all right, God, we'll catch up later. You know, we were playing games. You know, my friends knew I was a Christian. You know, they respected that. You know, they even came to church with me. But games was games, and God was God. They're intertwined. Um, Same thing with anime. Um, and so when the Lord put on my heart to do YouTube, I didn't know what this thing was even going to look like. I just thought that I would have a Let's Play channel. I might sprinkle a little bit of Jesus here and there between the Twitch and YouTube, and that was it because you don't mix these two. Um, Again, if you guys don't know, Ant is my pastor, the lead apostle at our church, and me and him have talks all the time. And so this is one of the ones I decided to get brave on, and I asked him about. I said, I really feel called to do this YouTube thing. I really don't like using that word called, but I'm just going to use it for a second language today. But I was like, I really feel a passion to do this. And, you know, like a good mentor he is, and you know, spiritual father is like, what? Well, why? What does God say about these things? I don't know. I don't think you can do that. I actually think that's a no-no. I actually just think I just want to start a YouTube channel because it's something I always want to do my whole life, you know? And so he was like, we're going to have to unpack that. And so after going through the mental struggles of why I was separating these two, the biggest question asked to me, being the pastor at that time, this was actually my first year of pastoring, truthfully enough, which is crazy. The question was asked, who's going to reach these gamers with the gospel message? And I'm like, okay. After I was like, but no one does this. He's like, well, no one? Because, you know, I'm a person that's on the extreme side of words. I might often use always. You always do that. Or, you know, I might use words like no one. And he's like, well, can we say no one emphatically? And I'm like, yeah. I'm confident. And we saw when we looked up not just a remnant of pastor, we saw a group of people, pastors and Christians alike, gaming and sharing their faith. Right. Now, I will talk about how scarce it is and how hard it is to navigate in this arena and the platform, but I feel like that's a whole different conversation. The point is, I left that conversation feeling inspired, and I was struggled throughout my years to really take a stance to saying that this is what my content is going to be about. I'm going to talk about God, but I am a gamer because this is who TC is. You know, before I was saved, I played games. After I got saved, I'm playing games, and now it's in Christ. Now, do I have a line of what I play? Yes and no. I think games are more heavily sexual. I stay away from. So if games is like full of fan service, I might have to take a detour. But a little bit of blood, you know, some guts, a little bit of choice language. I mean, I'm not going to say that bothers me. That's not cause me to sin. However, I'm very mindful of the type of content I post on my channel. If it's going to be an issue for someone else, I usually don't post it. But for my enjoyment, I will indulge those games because I feel like God can talk to me in those games. There's been like plenty of games that are just for someone's taste like crazy, and me and God be having a full-on conversation. Like, that's crazy how people think, and what are you saying about this? And so learning to invite God in those arenas instead of keeping them out on the couch or somewhere crazy, and really letting God say, hey, actually, I don't like this. I don't like you indulging this. That's where it gets scandalous, right? That's what we're afraid of, right? When we talk about these things is, what if God's not okay with it? You know, instead of actually stopping and asking God, well, are you okay with it? We're just like, no, he ain't good with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep this separate from him and just go ahead and do a step. Say, well, actually, how you feel about this? And you're like, yeah, you know, you can't watch this. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite shows growing up as a kid, I never thought this was going to be an issue with me and the Lord in our relationship. I watched this show since I was a kid, was Sailor Moon. I'm being so honest. Like, that was my show. Before I was a Dragon Ball Z fan, I was a Sailor Moon fan. I'll go ahead and proudly admit it. Okay, African American man loves some Sailor Moon. Care what you say about that? Was my peanut butter and some jam. And got a little bit older, got in my 20s. I remember just watching the uncut version of it because we be nerfing some things here in America. We nerf it to the ground for whatever our weird reasons is. And so I was watching the original, and I'm like, this is very different from what I watched as a kid. First off, second, I just begin to feel. I don't know. You guys might be able to relate. Just the unction of the Holy Spirit, like you feel like when something's not okay, and I think some people have the ability to really suppress and ignore. Me, I struggle with that. I'm like, oh man, okay. So I finished the episode. It was a rough episode. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I did something crazy. I stopped. That's what God. I was reading the word, but how do you feel about this show? And it was a no. It was, this causes your mind to do this. If you ever wonder why you have a struggle with this, this is going to feed this. I'm trying to keep things a little PG. I'm pretty sure you're a gentleman. If you wonder why you struggle with these type of thoughts with women, it comes from here. And this idea of sexuality that's in the show that's very underlined, to be honest with you, that people overlook. God's like, no, that's going to cause you to compromise. So goodbye Sailor Moon. I know Sailor Moon Crystal that came out. I know I have a whole bunch of movies. I even love. I was a show I really want to watch with my wife, but it's a no. And I'll go ahead and be further honest, and then I'm gonna shut my mouth because I feel like I'm talking too much. But I tried years later. Me and my wife married, trying to get an anime. I'm like, well, Sailor Moon's always safe for ladies. And me and my wife sitting down watching it. Both of us looking like, this ain't it. This ain't it. And so I was like, all right, God, sorry for even trying to push the envelope. I'm gonna go ahead and put this down. And so that's my thing on it. In short, it's not hitting all of it, but I want you guys to get in there too. But this is literally my life. I could go on about how people have the problem with doing stuff that I'm doing right now with gaming, because it's a lot. It's really complex. It really is nuance driven.
Yeah, I want to get to this comment.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So
Charles.
So before I jump in, let's go ahead and hit the comments. And guys, just a reminder, the gimmick here, chime in below. We want to hear from you. It helps stimulate the conversation. So we've got Charles. Yeah. We've got Charles in the comment section. When it comes to how does it affect you, there would be those who argue that your desensitized attitude towards X is a sin. I'm getting hit that one. Taking The Walking Dead for example, I was a big fan, but it was a problem for my pastor because I'm watching humans be torn apart. Okay, so T, we're the same age, right?
Yeah, I think we're literally almost the same, or like a year apart, somewhere like that. I don't know, but we're in the same age for sure, same generation.
Real quick before I go any further, good morning. There is an option where you can connect so that way we can see who this is. But sweet. You are coming straight through one of my channels, so I'm guessing I know you. But anyway. So okay. Let's go back to this one. And I'm going to put something you said on blast for a minute. I'm going to pose a question. What's the difference between horror movies and the 87th documentary basically fetishizing guys like Ted Bundy and stuff like that? What's the difference?
I don't think there is a difference. Just to be honest with you, I think it's about the individual, because even with horror movies, I separate them. Like there's some genre of horror movie I can watch, and then there's others I say I'm not watching that But that's a preference, right?
Right. So here's the thing, right? So I'm okay. Oh, how do I say this? I would probably venture to state that I am the most openly I do not, seriously, guys, don't hear what I'm not saying. This is not, I don't mean this politically. There's a word that's going to come out of my mouth. I don't mean it politically. I'm probably the most openly liberal on this subject out of the three of us, I would guess. I think if we really got down to the nitty gritty, T and I maybe.
And I'm the most conservative.
Yeah, for sure. And so T and I may find common ground in more than one spot, but I would say as a whole, I would venture to guess that I am the most open about this. I think part of it for me is because I can compartmentalize. Now, I can grab 1-2 things, like some super random stuff that I'm like, I don't really need to be watching that. So it's not lost on me what you guys are saying. So I'm not coming from this from an entirely different angle that says, no, you just need to be able to separate and all of that kind of stuff. Like, because we're humans, right? We're humans.
Right.
So I'm not trying to be unreasonable as far as all of this stuff goes. But where that line is, as far as what desensitizes you and what that actually means, is something that hits to me. And this is why I brought up the generation thing, T, is because you're literally in the epicenter for what the big thing was for our generation.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to bring up something that might be a sore subject to some. So seriously, viewer discretion is advised. I know for some people this hits very close to home and all of that kind of stuff. But for our generation, Columbine really changed the conversation as far as metal music, as far as violence in video games, as far as violence in movies, and all of that kind of stuff. And that really became a dominant part of the conversation of are these things creating these people that would go out and do these different things. Like that was a huge thing in the 90s, 2000s, all of that kind of stuff. And so growing up a metal fan, growing up a horror movie fan, growing up a video game fan, I heard all this. I heard every single argument and all of that kind of stuff. And I know when you guys that are of a particular vintage, I understand that this is not the first instance of censorship in media and all of that kind of stuff. This stuff's been happening for a long time. I'm just speaking to what our flavor of it is for our generation and all of that kind of stuff. And so to me, I come from this conversation with that as a part of it. So I have to be aware of when conversating about this, especially now from the pastoral perspective, being more well-rounded in my perspective, being able to see different people's perspectives and all of that kind of stuff. Part of why I cannot watch true crime is, for those of you that don't know, I cut my teeth in podcasting working with the Innocence Project. My first gigs as a producer were working with the Innocence Project, developing their media and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm sitting here.
And I've been watching that all week. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't like, because I know the realities of the legal system and all of that kind of stuff. I don't care. I would rather watch stuff like Scream. For those of you that don't get the reference, right, that's a gimmick from Scream. Yeah. I would rather watch something that's fictionalized than sit there and watch a documentary on our screwed up legal system. But that's a whole other conversation. So for me, I'm gonna say something. I think, and this kind of goes to the. Oh, did I accidentally? Oh,
okay.
G-Berry coming in hot.
G-Berry, what's up,
give me a minute, G-Berry. I'll hit yours in a second. But that brings me to this one. And Charles, thank you for commenting. Man, I'm not trying to pick on you. You just happen to be the first one in the comments. You just happen to be
G-Berry just brought something up, and I want to talk about that. But go ahead.
Okay. It just seems like to me some of these lines are arbitrary. They just do. Like, okay, I can understand this idea of, are you devaluing life? And asking the question, ask the question. I said that at the top. I literally said that at the rip. Allow yourself the opportunity to ask the questions. I have no problem with asking a question of, is watching a human being be torn apart by zombies devaluing life and all of that kind of stuff? Cool, no problem. Ask those questions. But there's a difference between asking the question and putting something down because you asked the question. And that to me is where that line exists. And this is why, like, shout out to, I understand we have our history and all of that kind of stuff, but seriously, shout out to the guys over at Systematic Ecology. Go listen to their stuff. If you are cool with folks that are very theologically open to various perspectives, probably the most judicious that I can say, then you'll really dig their stuff. If you're more rigid and like, no, this is wrong, that you're open, it might not be for you. But they really open the door to a lot of conversation. And working with them for a year, those guys really helped me to be able to see the value in asking bigger questions and constantly be investigating and allowing that dialogue to take place. Because even if it's something that I disagree with, even if it's something that I personally have a problem with or don't enjoy or something along those lines, I think that there's still value in consuming the question and all of that, like for sake of the question and all of that kind of stuff. Now, that being said, there's an asterisk with what I just said, and that asterisk is, now let me put this hat on where all of us are going to come under the same accord, and this is going to be a thread throughout this conversation. But I do think it's a bigger conversation than just resting on this particular thread. That, if a thing makes you stumble, elicits certain thoughts, elicits certain actions, whatever.
Absolutely.
Stay away from it. That's all. Like, stay away. That's the giant asterisk that remains present, that will probably come up again, and all of that kind of stuff. But just because we are allowing for more dialogue than just resting on that doesn't mean that we're leaving that asterisk behind. Do you guys think that's fair?
Absolutely. I agree.
Okay. So let me hop in here. This comment section is popping again, guys. Awesome.
What's up, people?
All right. So, G-Berry, I'm going to throw it up, but then I got to take it down because this is long.
It's too long.
I used to be very rigid and compartmentalize Christian content from secular content, because I used to believe if you watched, listened to, or indulged in anything other than Christian content, you weren't saved. I don't agree with that stance anymore, because it's very rigid, and I believe to be judgmental and critical of myself and others. There needs to be self-awareness of one's triggers, temptations, and also sensitivity to what Holy Spirit is saying to you as a believer in Christ. And then says, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of battle rap. Says fame. All right. So Bringing this one back. I read it, so I'll just put it up on the screen. And I'll let you go.
So, I love that he put this up here, because I think for me, and I gave you kind of the short version of my testimony of getting rid of all this stuff, right? And I think one of the main reasons that I felt like I needed to get rid of all this stuff, and Charles Daniels had put something up. He said he doesn't agree with this, but it is a stance that there was this idea floating around that if you expose yourself to this stuff, you're allowing these spirits to connect to you, and you could get, infected by, by these spirits, right? And so you kind of had that in your mind. Then as you kind of walk with the Lord, you figured out like, well, it's not a spirit connecting to you. It's actually exposing that you struggle with this, that you have temptation in this area, that this is your stumbling block, right? And so not to put it off as, oh, don't watch that because those demons will jump in you, don't do that, don't do, and so you find yourself telling, oh, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And like G. Berry said, it becomes very self-condemning. You always feel like you're failing. You always feel like you're far away from God because I watched this or I listened to that, and you're just struggling in your relationship with God when God knows you. He knows your insides and out. Instead of being sensitive to the Holy Spirit and letting him guide you, direct you, like, hey, pull back on that. That's too much, or what have you. And learning, because he posted up, that by the way, I'm a big fan of battle rap. And so I'm a pastor, and one of my guilty pleasures is from time to time, I'll go and binge watch some battle rap because I enjoy the way that they are able to articulate and put, the words together, and you're listening, and some of it is raunchy, some of it is horrible in taste. If somebody walked in the room, I'd probably turn it down. like, oh, you guys don't want to hear this stuff. This is just, and it's something that, as I said, from time to time, I'll put it on and like, why does this intrigue me so much? Well, it's because I grew up in West Philadelphia, and in West Philadelphia, that was something that was done on a regular basis on a street corner. They started out calling it dozens, right? But it changed into rap. And so somebody would beatbox, and then I talk about your whole everything. I talk about your mom, your dad, the car you drive, the roaches in your house, your hole in your roof, and everybody, and the whole thing. And so from time to time, and it's like, you find it and you come across it and you listen. You're like, oh, it's like, why am I listening to this? Why is this grabbing a hold of me, to listen to this, and it's something that, you feel like people would judge you for admitting that you enjoy that, especially because you're a pastor, that, because pastors don't get to be people, right?
Yep. Absolutely not.
You don't get to
absolutely
be
not.
You better not try to be a person.
How dare you?
How dare you be a person and like some regular stuff that people like, right? How dare you do that? So for me, I love where G Berry's coming from, and me and him have had conversations. I've even let him hear some of the stuff that I did back in the day before I was saved, and cringe, sitting next to him, cringing like, oh my God, oh no. But getting over that and saying, but this is a part of my testimony. This is a part of who I am. Is a part of the way that I am. And it's partly the reason why I can relate to somebody like him, even though I'm like 15, 20 years older than him. I can still relate to him because of that. And so it's one of those things, again, is it all right? Well, I would never tell anybody, hey, go watch this, unless there was already something. Like if it was Willie, I'd send it to him. Like, hey, check this out. This dude killed this. And he'd be like, yeah, you're right. And he would never lower me in his mind, like, this guy ain't no real, he would never do that to me in his mind, but other people might.
Okay. So
a surprise I'm sorry.
We're just real quick. I don't want to lose the thread on what you said though, Ant.
Go ahead.
Oh, how do I? So knowing that there are folks in this, from 3 different communities that I have a voice in, that I am known in, and all of that. I have to be wise with my words. But y'all, I can't say as though I honestly really care about the public perception of what the impact on the public perception of me that my fandoms have. Like, you just need to see for 30 seconds on my background. I am a fan of, you can see comics, you can see horror, you can see Ninja Turtles. I pulled this out because you brought up Call of Duty. I'm a huge zombies fan. Like, yeah. I'm not like, it's not. And yeah, you're right. You are 100% right, Ant. That there are folks that you will lose credibility in their eyes if you admit to the fact that you're a fan of this stuff, that you enjoy watching this stuff. If you can't handle the fact that I'm a fan of something and I lose credibility in your eyes just simply off of the fact that I'm a fan of something, we're not talking about how I act. I'm not talking about the speech that comes out of the mouth. Nothing. We're talking about fandom. That's all we're talking about right this very second. If that causes you to lose credibility, that's not a you problem. That's a them problem. That's not on you. That's on them. And that might be this might be the other side of rigidity coming out. Sure, whatever. That might be what it sounds like. But dude, like, why? But like, I go back to this one sticking point because I hear this all the time. Yo, how can you go out here watching stuff like horror movies or violence in video games and all this kind of stuff and call yourself a pastor? But again, you're watching my favorite murder, my favorite serial killer, my, Ted Bundy is my hero, all of this nonsense. And that's the issue. Like, I go back to arbitrary lines when it comes to this sort of thing. And I guess I just don't, and this is me let's stimulate the conversation. Guys, you guys in the comment section disagree with me. You guys on the panel disagree with me. I don't care. It doesn't bother me to have people disagreeing with me, but I guess I just don't see why it's got to be a guilty pleasure. It's got to be like the one difference, the one caveat that I'll throw out there is if you're showing stuff that you've done and being from that part of the world, I understand that a lot of times you're insulting people, you're talking about this, that, and the other. Like, I can understand that being something that you would cringe about, because it's a different attitude towards the individual and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to be unreasonable with how I'm viewing this whole thing. But again, just purely at the fandom perspective, I don't understand why these things need to be guilty pleasures just because they don't line up with somebody else's taste.
Pastor JB just jumped on here, and
Yo.
Me and him, we've known we've known each other for many years, and so he comes from the same type of background I come from, and so for like me, when I say one of my guilty pleasures, and I know that bothers you, Joe, is watching battle rap. I would love for JB to chime in on that if he gets a chance, on some of the things that, why that would be a guilty pleasure, because I just think that some of the things that are said, you're like, oh, that's cringeworthy, right? But at the same time, like you said, check my character, right, Joe? Like, what kind of person is he? Before you just, oh, I saw that you liked this battle rap channel on here.
Yeah.
What kind of pastor is that? So I love where you're coming from with that, because I do think, people have a right to their opinion, like you said, and you could be being rigid on the opposite end of it,
Right.
But I think it's something that's worth, like you're saying, hey, let's throw it out there. Let's put it on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's see what happens. Right?
Yeah. T, you got anything before I jump back into these comments?
A lot. Like I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I guess I'm just going to be a little bit brave and be transparent, which is my specialty, and also some things that people don't like. But I feel like I'm always tear-tying on this spectrum, because one's age, one deals with genre, and one just deals with of course, the persona of being a pastor, Christian. I feel like it goes for sometimes a Christian. How can you be a Christian and watch this? So I don't think it's just in a separate category for pastors. I just think people, when it comes to certain type of content that's being consumed, become overly judgmental.
Yep.
I think the hard part is saying, well, what's true, what's not true, and we wish it was white and black. So for me, I think the thing, I was even talking to my friends about this, my best friends about this yesterday, both of them, and my wife, is that I feel like being me is automatically this judgment of, yeah, that's immature. There's no way he's doing that for God. That's just him. And that concerns gaming. I didn't realize the challenge I was going to take on being a Christian gamer. I actually thought it'd be celebrated more than hated, and there's times I think it should be hated more, and sometimes it's celebrated more. It's really that extreme. I'm telling you. I think people around me sometimes is the hardest to be around, because it's this idea of you're 30-some years old, you're playing games, you still are acting like a kid. Yep. So it's just that mindset in itself. So there is no, well, this is something I enjoy. This is something that I used to spread the gospel with and talk to God about. That's just automatic shutdown. So needless to say, support from my inner circle is hard, because it's kind of like that dot frame, or I'm not interested, and so sometimes when people come from their interest, it goes to, why are you interested in that? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, because I'm interested in it, just like you're interested in something. No, you can't do that. You're this, you're that. And so it becomes really challenging. And then you just got, of course, people's general thoughts based off of their perspective, which can be challenging. I think at the end of the day, and I think I can't wait to get to JB's comment. That's what it is. You're being who you are. Yeah. And I think people really struggle with that, especially being a Christian. I am who I am. Yeah. This doesn't diminish my character because I like battle rap. It doesn't diminish my character because I like some Devil May Cry. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick on that one for me as a gamer. I know the title itself is already sketchy, right? It is. It's probably as sketchy as you think it is, but that's one of my favorite gaming series. And I have talked to my friend David, who is, like, I'm trying to figure this God thing out, is a Devil May Cry fan, and we've had talks about God with this game. How this game is talking about Sparta and so much more, and it's like, Yes, see? Yes, I do. All right, Jamie in the house, bro. Jamie gets it. He gets it. Okay, anyway. So night moment. I'm just saying I had some powerful conversations.
Was that a fan moment?
Yes, bro. It's an exciting moment because it feels good to be understood. And that's why we like fandoms. There's a sense of understanding. But like I said, this has been the catalyst of sharing my relationship with God, with one of my closest friends grew up with, playing this game. And you're going to tell me that that's not of God just because it's not framed in a neat little box that you're accustomed to? I don't know why we do that as Christians, that things have to be in a cute, neat little box. And let me go ahead and not be on the other side extreme. I get there's certain things that we should just be watching. I will go ahead and be a little bit of the unpopular opinion. There are certain things, Christians should not indulge in. You know, obviously. I don't know if I like to say this. You'll know what they are. You know, anything that's going to make you go against your character with God, cause you to sin. I mean, come on, black and white. If you're a gentleman and you struggle with lust, I don't know if it's a good move for you to watch some hentai type of based anime. Okay, let's just keep. I'm going there. Let's just keep it stat. Probably not for you, but by all means, you know, you gotta make your own decisions. I think there's just certain things we know. And I think it goes back to one of my favorite quotes. Again, people know what Christians don't like. We make it supremely vocal. But do they know what we're for? Can we have conversations? Can you come talk to me? Can you challenge me? Why can't we be challenged? That's one thing I love about being a gamer. And this is the part where I feel glad that God called me to such a group of people, is I've been on streams with people who are from the LGBT community asking me how God feels about them playing the game. I've been in conversations with someone who is like, I like this game. Am I going to hell? And having the conversation. I just had conversation with a student yesterday, like, Mr. I love One Piece, but someone told me I'm going to hell because I watch anime. I love that I'm in place in these conversations to have these conversations. But why can't we accept that we live in a world where people are going to like things and they're going to want to talk about things? And you can't be so self-righteous that, oh, well, no, that's, I can't watch that, you know, or I don't watch that, or we're not going to talk about this, where you can at least open up a dialogue. If you don't like it, fine. I think you're totally fine with your preference. That's absolutely fine. But to totally dismantle somebody, shut them down, not even eye to eye, see where they're coming from, that's where I think the divide happens. And but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So before I comment, there's a couple of comments that I skipped over. So we mentioned it, but just pulling it up here, I agree personally. I think it comes from the idea of exposing yourself to certain things and allowing spirits connected to it to enter into you. Charles says, personally, I don't agree with the stance. I just wanted to get your feedback regarding his earlier comments. Kenji's in the chat. Good morning.
Kenji.
Y'all think that's bad. My throwback raps were tragic. And then JB's comments we hit. I want to stick this one up as a good backdrop for what I want to hit on. So I started off.
Oh,
maybe not, Joe.
Well, all right, Angelo. We just, we're not even, just for those of you wondering, that's about, I don't know, an eighth of what was sent. Anyway, I'm playing, Angelo. Thank you for chiming in. Good morning. All right. So, if I decide to abide, to stay and connect in that or certain places rather than the true vine, then something on the inside will begin to develop. A dry and withered branch in some areas. I want to love the Lord our God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and my neighbor as myself. I don't want to be a stumbling block for my brethren, especially if I'm a leader of God's precious flock, presenting my body in a living sacrifice, not for what I like, but what he wants. Not not I like not I like military and action movies, and I know it has bloody, gruesome, bad language, sex, hate, wrath, etc. Kind of sounds like Galatians 5. And can you look that up real quick while I'm reading this?
Mm-hmm.
Because if he's going to introduce scripture, I want to read the actual scripture.
Mhm.
The question to me is watching these things that I like only fulfilling the lust of the flesh, though I'm not practicing it physically? Am I agreeing with it in my mind, which is God's now, with my strength, my time? This is a great conversation. Okay, Angelo. Cool.
That's heavy.
All right, Galatians 5:19 is the reference that he's pulling from. So go ahead and read that real quick if you got it.
Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness. I'm gonna keep going. Idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousy, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambition, dissensions, and heresy, envy, murder, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I told you beforehand, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God.
There you go. Absolutely. So here's my question, though: watching something depicted, does that mean that you're engaging with it? And I appreciate you, Angelo, because honestly, I could probably guess. I don't want to speak for you because this is a soundbite at best, right, as to your perspective and all of that kind of stuff. So, but I would guess that we may not see eye to eye on this particular one. That being said, though, I appreciate you asking the question because that's part of the gimmick, right? That's part of why we do this. That's the whole gimmick behind Let It Rip, is let's have the conversation. Okay, cool. So you put it out there. So here's and this is where it comes down to, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to piggyback off of something that that T said as far as the gaming thing, right? So many people put away childish things. Angelo, I'm bringing up a different point. I understand you didn't say that. I'm bringing up a different point. I'm going to circle back to what also you said. So this is not me putting words in your mouth. Put away childish things. That's not what that means. I don't know who needs to hear that this morning, but that's not what that means. But it's this idea of, because you're a grown man, because you're this, because you're that, because you're a Christian, don't do this, don't do that. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, you know I'm getting fired up when my Fitbit's tracking the telling me that I'm walking because I'm talking so much with my hands. So for those of you that don't know, I'm going to take a little peek behind the curtain. I'm a blues musician. I am one of the G-Berry. If you're watching, man, I don't think I ever got a chance to tell you were an inspiration to me when I was out in Denver. You, Ant, were an inspiration to me when I was out in Denver, because for a long time I held separate from God this idea of the talent that I have as a musician, because I had a problem with the Sunday morning model. I had a problem with it's a long story. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I had issues with the Sunday morning model. And so I'm like, I'm not going to do a worship team. I'm not going to do all this because I don't, it's my musical time is for me. It's not for church. Well, wait a minute. Hold up. Hold the phone. Saying that it's not for church is different than saying that's not for God. But what I was saying without saying was it wasn't for God.
Right. Yeah.
Now, again, there's a lot of stuff to that. There's layers to that. But all of that to say, I am working on a worship album.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So but my brick, like my foundation is the blues. Some of my biggest inspirations in music, my home base, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. These are the people that I pull inspiration from for my music. George Thorogood, Stevie Ray Vaughan, B.B. King. These guys did not develop Christian music. Now, is that wrong? Am I cooperating with sinful practices because I like that type of music? Because I listen to those type of people? Well, story time with the Saints here. There are some folks within the local music scene that are not Christian, that they lovingly call me Padre, because they know that yes, sir. G-Berry knows what's up. I'm gonna put that one up.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Reliability, man.
They affectionately call me Padre because they know I'm a pastor, and they know. And actually, cool story. They actually surprised me the one day that we all got together to jam. They worked on a blues riff of Amazing Grace, because they, like we talked about, like some of that tie between blues and old school gospel, and all of those kind of branching musical stylings that all come from that style of music. And I talked about how I do really dig like soulful gospel and soul music and all of that kind of stuff, because it's just a slight extension from blues. It's basically taking that and taking that standard blues riff that all these guys perfected and applying it essentially, and changing the timing. It's just simple changes. And we played that. And that was a moment, y'all. That was, and guys, I was the only Christian in that whole deal, but we were still doing that. But we weren't engaging with that. That was not a Christian scene. That wasn't Christians doing that. So again, nuance, levels, layers. Like, that's my point in bringing all of that up, is all of this is so incredibly nuanced. Like, yeah, okay, there's some music. I'm that dude who, when I train, I'm doing stuff like training to the Rocky soundtrack and all that kind of stuff. I'm very stereotypical in that kind of way. Dude growing up in on the East Coast, all that kind of stuff, a fighter, all that. Like, yeah, I am very stereotypical in that way. There's some rap that I listen to that's about certain things that I don't know if it's by every other standard of measurement, it is the same style of rap that I like. So yeah, you can make an argument that it's the subject matter that I don't really dig. And so I don't listen to that anymore. I would have once upon a time, but I just don't dig it anymore. I don't need that language. I don't need any of that. But with something like this, I think we need to take it out of the paradigm of, oh, just because we're listening to it, just because we're consuming it, does that mean that we are cooperating with it? And I think that all of that cooperating with something takes intentionality that just consuming something doesn't actually employ. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went right there, because that's where I wanted to go. Is that because I think the way Angelo put it is that I'm not necessarily doing this physically, right? But by watching it and enjoying it, am I agreeing with it? Am I saying that it's good and it's right and it's just and I think there's a part of our thinking, and Joe talked about compartmentalizing earlier, right? There's a part of our thinking that has the ability to separate this from, is it right? Is it good? Is it just? And we just put it over here in this spot where it just is. And it's like, don't touch that with the conversation of morality or ethics. Don't mess up this wonderful little thing that I have. That's why I call it a guilty pleasure, right? Because it's like, I don't want you to mess with this with, is it right or is it wrong? Because I'm not promoting this to anybody. I'm not, preaching this to anybody. I'm not saying everybody should like this because I do. I'm saying this is something that I like, and I have to grapple with, am I crossing a line into sinfulness? Because there's certain things that for me, I know are sin, right? I know are sin. But then there's other things that it's just, no, this is just entertainment for me. This is just something that I like to listen to or watch or what have you, and you feel like you don't want this to be tainted by the question of ethics and morality. Like, don't mess with it. Just let me watch my Star Wars. I don't want to make it a theological dissertation. I just want to, watch Lord of the Rings and all 9 hours of it. Don't bother me. Right? Because I enjoy this, because this is my type of thing. Like you said, what's the difference between watching Gladiator and watching a zombie movie? Gladiator's cutting people's guts open too. Gladiator, he's just, what's the difference? And I say that because, I think we have to kind of wrestle through what that looks like for individuals, and is there an across the board standard, right? And those that are watching, please chime in, on this, that when we're talking about music, we're talking about movies, we're talking about media, we're talking about gaming, where do you personally draw the line for yourself? Number one, you have to make that decision. And then, do I have the authority or right to impose that line on somebody else?
Right.
And I think that's where it is. First, identifying my position, like, okay, where is it for me? And I'll give y'all another quick example. There was a movie, Players Club. Now, a lot of y'all, probably know that movie. Players Club was a movie that I really liked, but I, rededicated my life to Christ. I was walking with the Lord, and I went back and I was watching it one day, and it was just, I was like, this is too much. This is like sensory overload. I didn't realize how much sex, how much cussing, how much I was like, and I was laughing at this stuff, and I was, and it's like, oh man, this is a lot for me. For someone else, it's not a big deal, right? For someone else, they're like, what's the problem? I'll give you one more. Training Day. One of the most famous scenes in Training Day, Denzel Washington is cussing, right? King Kong ain't got y'all. Amen. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And it's like, am I wrong for liking that? Am I wrong for liking that scene? Am I wrong for liking the passion that he put into that particular moment? Am I wrong for that? And so I think number one, and I'll say this again, you have to address your limit. Where's your line? And then you have to ask yourself, am I allowed to impose that on other people? And just because I can go and quote a scripture to do it, does that mean that that's within my purview to be able to do that to other people? So say you. Come on, chime in, y'all. Jump in.
I stick to what I say, man. Is that I get it, the morality. A part of me is saying, and forgive me, so what? Why does it have to be something that I have to approach theologically? Why can't it just be enjoyed? Like I think there's things in life to be enjoyed. And I don't know. I come from a person being like a lot of you guys in the comments on the panel, like, yeah, I can't do this, I can't do that, and like Willie, I really resonate with Willie's comment because it made me rigid. It just made me feel like I can't do nothing, and so it kind of created like a weird rebellion in me. Like, well, I'm gonna do whatever I want then, or it made me very judgmental. There's always those two extremes. Is either when I was mad, life happened, I was immature, a mad God, quote unquote, I'm gonna do whatever I want because everything's just so off limits. When I'm in God, well, I can't do nothing. So why are you doing that? And I'm really talking about towards my Christian brothers and sisters. It made me look at them like that. What's wrong with you? There was no sense of harmony. So I think it has to be personal. I think again, what you know. Like Aunt, you kept saying it. Players Club ain't the movie for you. That ain't the movie. you ain't gonna put that on because and I think people have to be okay with accepting that. It's just like I don't know why we have a hard time accepting that sometimes. That I'll use my friend's example because G Berry be one of them. I'm not gonna invite G Berry to go see a Halloween movie if my buddy Terry invites me to go out. That ain't his thing. That ain't his thing because he's told me what that does to him spiritually. Cool, I accept him. Just like G Berry's like, cool. You gonna go ahead and watch that? Go ahead. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably gonna watch it with one eye peeking because I'm totally a scary guy. While my other friend T just loves stuff like this. Cool. I just think the breakdown happens when we start getting really critical, and I do like Angela's comment as well because it does speak to the fact of being sensitive to a brother. As a leader, I want to make this very clear. As a leader, it does not give a green pass for irresponsibility.
Oh, right. Certainly not.
Right. But you would think because I've been on the other side. That's like, well, they'll get it right, so I can do what I want. But no, this is not a green pass. But it is to say that we should slow down and understand each other. And Paul always has this type of writings where he's trying to get people to do that. Is to respect one another in the compounds of the relationship with Christ with love. He does it with me. He does it with holidays. He does it with, I call it holidays. He does it with so many different things. And I do see the comments rolling in. So I'm going to take a quick break. I want to get these comments because these are some good comments.
Yeah. All right. So, Kenji, none of the things mentioned are profitable for me. Okay. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but okay. Chalmer, good morning. So for me, no matter what it is, if my spirit convicts, I have to make a choice to stop. For others only, if I know the person has communicated this thing is a struggle for me, then I will say something. JB, we have freedom, but don't let your freedom become your personal noose.
Oops. Uh-oh, he's rapping. No, it's bars. Oh, snap.
Change now to no, Chalmer says.
Oh, okay. No matter.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna take this one. Yeah, so if we're gonna get philosophical, and talk about things like morality and all of that kind of stuff, then cool, let's do that. So I'll throw this out there. Now let's say it's a stumbling block, right? Let's say it's a personal stumbling block, and you can't handle it. Does that make it wrong? And that now that's a different question than should you be watching it? Those are not the same answer.
Right.
So my question is to go back up to Angelo's comment. He mentioned military and action movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Show of hands. How many of us have sat through a bad illustration of Lord of the Rings used in a Christian context? Lord of the Rings is one of those movies that gets preached and exemplified and all of that kind of stuff here, there, and everywhere in the Christian context, right? We want to spiritualize the all get out of that movie. Somebody explain to me the difference between an action movie and that. Because if we're just taking it on merits, it's not it's hate, it's wrath, it's bloodshed. The only difference is that it's creatures and it's not humans. There are some humans involved, but it's not human on human, it's human on creature. So I bring this up, and please don't like, I understand that I am positioning myself in all of this as the spicy one on the panel, as the guy who's rocking the boat more than the other two and all of that kind of stuff. But seriously, Angelo, Chalmer, JB, Willie, everybody else that has commented on, for anybody that I'm forgetting, seriously, keep them rolling. We're having dialogue here. I have no problem with this. I am not trying to position myself against anybody or anything else like that. Except for the fact that I am positioning myself against JB currently. Everybody's entitled to one bad opinion. That's JB, fine.
I'm with you. That's you got another point on the panel.
Oh, okay. Hot take, y'all. Can I go here? Lord of the Rings is one of the single most overrated works of fiction that exists. Hold up. Lewis did it first and better with Narnia. I said what I said, and I will not be accepting questions at this time. Oh, Chalmer, look at him. I'm just going to leave this one up here. Chalmer wins the comment section.
Fire. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. So y'all, I just, but this is the gimmick, right? Like, having this dialogue and asking those questions, does it make it wrong? Does it make it wrong to dig these types of these types of movies, these types of TV shows, these types of music, all of that kind of stuff? Is it wrong just because I, in my spirit, don't agree with the subject matter, or can't handle the subject matter, or something along those lines? Because if it's wrong, if because you can't handle it, it's wrong, then how is that any different than looking at your brother or sister and saying it's wrong for you to consume that? You know what I'm saying?
I think I want to jump in there on that, because I think that is a conversation that's a conversation that's difficult to have, because sometimes you're saying it's wrong for you, and a person will interpret it that you're saying it's wrong for everybody.
Right.
Or you're saying this is right for you, and they'll interpret it that you're saying that it's right for everybody. And so it's like it's really difficult to have your own thing and say, you know what, I can't watch that. Oh, well, why can't you watch that? You should be able to watch that. You should be able to, there's nothing wrong with this. And it's like, well, hold on. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying for me, and I think Chalmers' comment, where's the one? Self-awareness.
Self-awareness
Yeah,
of my
put that one up
flesh
there.
is
Self-awareness
making
of my flesh is the key to making a choice.
Yeah.
Self-awareness of my flesh, right, is the key to making my choice. Because, like you said, okay, you may hate true crime, right? But is it wrong to watch it, right? Another person may say, oh, it's too gory and it's too bloody, but is it wrong? I think that's a whole different conversation. And that's why I asked the question. Once I figure out, my issue and say, you know what, this is not good for me.
Right.
Do I have the right to impose a blanket statement that says, well, this is wrong across the board? And I don't think I do. I just would say I don't have the right to then demonize it for everybody. And I think in Christendom, we've had that happen too often, where someone says this is not good for me, and so they preach across the board that everybody should never do it again. And I think that's where we're imposing our personal morality on other people. But then there's one more layer. What if it actually is sinful according to the Bible, and it happens to be something that a person is very passionate about? Can't that still come off as they're attacking people, right? They're attacking people, on this particular issue because they're so passionate about this particular thing in the Bible, saying that it's wrong. It turns into, now I beat people up, because, oh, this is wrong and I can prove it. Look, read it. You know what I'm saying?
So, can I ask a question real quick, just a clarifying question, so that way we fully develop that thought. Can you give an example of that last point? What, like, an example of what you might be talking about?
Let's say pornography, right?
Okay, all right.
And I just hammer everybody from the pulpit on this every week. Just, if y'all are doing this, if y'all are doing that again, if y'all are getting, you're going to hell, all this crazy stuff that people do, right? But we all agree that, you know what, you're right, it is wrong. But why do you have to keep hammering me with it? So that's an example.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Because
sorry.
No, because I think, it's really, I want to point this out. This happens in the world too. I have two things that, I was just really thinking about as you were speaking. So in the world, they do this too. Like, there's a game called Sonic Omens that was a fan game, and people hate this game. Some people like it because it's a fan project. But what they hate about it is the controversy surrounding it concerning certain assets of the game being used, them taking money from a Patreon. It's a whole bunch of drama that, truthfully, I don't have time to explain. Point of the matter is, there are people like, you should not support this game. There's people like, well, I like the game. It's horrible. It plays horrible. And people overexert their morality and how they feel about the game because of their experience based off of what people say. I bring this up to say that we're very relational when it comes to things that we like. So, for example, like we're talking about, you're talking about Lord of the Rings, you're talking about the various different things. If someone feels like they like something, they enjoy it, they often, a majority of the time, they want our people to enjoy it with them. Yeah. So when you say, I can't watch this because this does something to me, that's where disconnect automatically happens, because people do take it personal, because from them, it's a personal thing they're trying to get you to experience with them.
Right.
And so I will go ahead and say, just being transparent, I felt that with certain friends, like, yeah, I can't watch that. Because it's like, well, dang, I got to switch up my whole hangout time with you. God, I was going to introduce this to you. And you're like, I can't watch this. And there is a certain feeling of, if we be honest, frustration. Yeah. Mixed in with a stance of, I love this person, so I'm going to let them make their choice. And that's on, I feel like, more on the mature side. imagine someone who doesn't understand that concept. That's rejection for them. You're rejecting me because you don't watch this. No, I'm just making this choice for me because this is not good for me. But for the person, it's like you're rejecting me. And so to the last point about hammering, I think that adds more, for lack of better words, insult to injury. So yeah, I'm just gonna pick on the one that you already put out. So sexual and porn. Well, God don't want you watching that because that's pornographic. It's soft porn, and people are like, well, why you gotta hit me like that? I'm not doing porn. I just like this and I want you to enjoy this with me. So now it becomes an attack. So it went from being, okay, I can't connect with you, I'm being rejected, and now you're attacking me. And therefore defenses happen. They're going to be like, yo, I can't do this with you. I can't be around you. There goes whatever. We know the blanket statements, judgmental people, judgmental Christians. And then there's, like I said, the other side. There's people for not accepting me for who I am and my choices. They're judging me. So both sides are judging each other. And I think the question I asked on top of a question, how do we get past that? How do we actually accept each other? At the same time, I do want to add to this, at the same time, be mindful of quote unquote things that are sinful. So how can there be a sense of accountability, but a sense of enjoyment at the same time, while it being a massive attack?
So I think one of the things that you, just to echo what you both have said, that is a hurdle that you have to overcome when having this conversation, is the personal affiliation with the fandom. I'm going to use an example. Football, right? I have really not, like, I have stopped enjoying football nearly as much. I have my own reasons for that. Nothing spiritual, nothing, anything like that. There's the entire concept and all of that, of the paid athletes, of the system, of all of it, I've got my own problems with, and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with God. But even when I was at the height of my fandom, one of the things that annoys me and is like nails on a chalkboard to me when I listen to football fans is we. Yo, when was one time you stepped on that field with that team? Name one time that you were affiliated with that team. Oh, we did this and we won, bro. You sat yourself on your couch and you watched that from your TV. You have nothing to do with that team. Like that is wish fulfillment and putting yourself out on the field with the team and all of that kind of stuff. But it's that same kind of personal identification with the things that you enjoy and incorporating that into a sense of identity and all of that kind of stuff. And that is really hard to combat, because you can come with all of the caveats that you can muster, all of the eloquent language that you try to thread the needle and not try to loop people together and this and that, and you're still going to fall short with some folks, because there's that heightened level of personal identification. But I think there's this necessity, like, and you brought this up about the whole people jumping on you and all of this kind of stuff. Well, maybe that means that the responsibility is on the individual to state, good, right, wrong, or indifferent, that this is how I identify for myself. That we can't take for granted that people understand that we are not making blanket statements, because, just being honest, this topic of conversation is so incredibly prevalent within Christendom that, like, I've literally had to walk somebody through this yesterday. So I'm at the I'm at the church, and I jokingly say that I'm the MOD because I was the only one on the pastoral team that was there. So if there's any kind of anything that people have questions about or anything else like that, it's going to default to me, and all of that kind of stuff. And so the electrician's there, he's doing work and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that he and I vibe on is that he is a really big blues fan and all that. And so he's like, "Oh, check out the song that like," and I knew it, and we're vibing and this whole 9 yards. And I'm watching as one of the women that were there to do some work got super uncomfortable. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation. And so I had a conversation with her, and I was like, why is this? Like, are you okay? All of this kind of stuff. And I'm asking, and I start to ask these questions, like, hey, tell me if I'm off base here. But this is the body language that I started to pick up on. If something was done that made you uncomfortable, I would like to know about it. You know what I mean? And because that wasn't the goal or anything like that. She was very much that whole Christian should only listen to Christian music type and all of that. And that is a stance that I will fight anybody on. I don't mean that in a hyper aggressive way, but if you're going to come at me with that stance of Christians should only listen to Christian music and all of that kind of stuff, then pack a lunch and be prepared to go to school and have a reason for articulating that and all of that kind of stuff, because that's a particular stance that I poke a lot of holes in very, very quickly. Because generally it's centered around CCM. It's generally centered around very specific messaging and all of this kind of stuff. And that's a subject matter that because I've seen how God can move in music in general, that it does not have to be Christian, that is a misnomer. That's something I feel passionately about. But in that moment, I needed to see the individual that was sitting there, not bring what's saying, not all this kind of stuff, but see that person and what that person was saying. Now, I see you, Willie, but I have one more point to make as far as all of this goes. Like in the words of Pastor Will, again, go check out Systematic Ecology for more from this guy. From the words of Pastor Will, like what you like and don't be a jerk. Like, if you dig, I don't know I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you. I'm probably going to rattle off people that were popular in Christian music 15 years ago, but I don't know, Chris Tomlin and Michael W. Smith and whoever else. I don't know. I'm not going to keep trying. If you like these Christian artists and all this kind of stuff, and that's something that you're passionate about and you really enjoy that kind of music, cool. No problem. And we were able to kind of come to an accord, agree to disagree. She didn't leave there suddenly thinking that it was okay for Christians to, but she also, I was able to bring a level of nuance. She was able to bring a level of nuance. We were able to have a conversation, all of that kind of stuff. I did tell him to, like, put that away. Like, let's not make anybody uncomfortable, anything else like that, because while that's not wrong, what we were doing was not wrong. It is not wrong. Just because somebody stumbles over it does not make it wrong. Creating an environment where somebody stumbles because of it, that's wrong. That's why I bring up that question of, just because somebody stumbles over it, does that make it wrong? Does that mean that the media is inherently wrong? And I say, no, There's that I may not like true crime. Does it make it wrong? No. I might not like Lord of the Rings. Does it make it wrong? No, it just means it's trash. Anyway, but just because I don't like these things, The Chosen, just because I don't like The Chosen, does it make it wrong? No. I think we need to stop putting depictions of pretty boy Jesus out there, but that's a whole other conversation. That's that level of nuance that we have to bring to the conversation. And I think that, again, right, wrong, or indifferent, we need to, the responsibility is on the individual to bring that level of nuance every single time, because we're playing in a playground where so many people did not bring that level of nuance. So, yeah, if you're saying that this is a guilty pleasure, then the responsibility is on you to say why that's a guilty pleasure. If you're saying, I don't think Christian, or I don't engage with this, the responsibility is on you that if you're having that conversation and say, I don't agree with this, why and what, and is it just a you thing? You might not agree with me, you might not like it, but so many people have screwed this up that now people are going to hear what you're not saying. That sucks that's the case, but that's just the case. And it might sound like I'm saying, like, don't be passionate about things. Like, yo, no, be passionate. For as much as I am passionate about getting on here and about sharing the word of God, and I am passionate about the word of God because I understand the weight and responsibility and honor it is to share the word of God, to be able to lead people, to be able to articulate well. That is a heavy and holy burden that I accept humbly, and all of those kinds of things. I am also passionate about the things that I like, and getting in front of the microphone and talking about those things. Because that's who I am. That's what I am. That's how I'm wired. That's how my brain's wired. And rather than throwing arrows at people for being passionate or caring about things and saying this is wrong because of this, and that's before we even get to this whole idea of, hey, if that movie was made by a secular company that does not play by your playbook, why are we expecting it to have our morality structure? Again, it goes to the individual, not blanket statements, sweeping statements, all of those kinds of things. And that's where I get fired up about this thing, because I've seen so much how stuff like God's not dead gets a free pass. And that's some of the most judgmental, hateful nonsense that I have ever seen on screen. But because I like superheroes, I'm a heathen. Because T plays video games, he's immature. Because Ant likes Supernatural, he's out of pocket.
I love Supernatural.
Let me jump to Willie's point. Again, Willie has a thing for sending super long messages, so I gotta take it down to be able to read it. Absolutely. Absolutely, bro. There is frustration. And to be honest, there's been times where I take people's boundaries personal when I'm making an attempt to share what I like. I felt like I was being rejected when I need to understand people's boundaries and learn how to kick it with them and move accordingly, instead of getting in my feelings over petty things and thinking people should agree with me or possess a similar mindset. Nah, fam. Disagreements don't mean discord. It's like we've been saying, it's a matter of preference.
Agreed. Well said, sir.
Yep. What do you guys got?
I don't know. I think when it comes down to this conversation, I think it's important for people to, as Willie said, disagreement doesn't mean discord. I say I don't have to disconnect from you just because I disagree. You know,
Yeah.
because a lot of times that's the automatic default.
Yeah.
If I disagree, we're done. You know, if I don't, you know, sing back up to whatever song you're singing, you know, then we're not cool or whatever. I just feel like that's not, you know, real life relationships. Real life relationship, any relationship that you've had for long term, you've had to have some different disagreements in that relationship. You've had to come across things that you agreed to say, I don't agree with that, but I'm not taking that from you. I'm not going to, you know, say you can't, you know, like this or like that. I mean, that's life. I think the issue comes in when we're focusing in on trying to determine what is absolutely based upon God's, you know, point of view, right and wrong. And I think Paul was definitely led by the Spirit and super wise when he said that all things are lawful to me, but not everything is beneficial, you know, but I will not be a slave to anything, right? And so ultimately, you know, if I have to, as you said, turn my jazz off because this person walks in and they struggle, then that's not a problem for me. But if I make it an issue, like I'm not doing that because, you know, they need to just, you know, then now I'm a slave to that. And I don't want to love my neighbor because I want to promote this or anything, you know. And like I said, I was just using your example with the young lady at the church. Like, hey, I don't want to offend her. I like what I like, right? But I don't want to be a jerk. You know, I'm not going to just force her to listen to it just because you better listen to it because this is what I like and it's a free country. You know, all that kind of stuff. I feel like that tips over into pride. And once you start tipping into that pride, you know, barrel, and we start sipping from that, we can get intoxicated, you know, on our own, you know, preferences. I just think, you know, at the end of the day, when we're looking at this particular subject matter, you know, faith and fandom, being a fan of this, being a fan of that, you know, there's going to be, especially all of us that are in front of a microphone, all of us that are on social media, that's free game to disagree, right?
Oh, absolutely.
People are going to disagree, and we've got to be prepared for people to disagree with just our stance in general, let alone our fandom, our preferences, the things that we like, the things that we're a fan of. Are there things that I want to promote to people? No, it's kind of the opposite. I'm like, that's mine. You know, like Joe was saying earlier about music, you know, like this is my thing, you know. I want to enjoy this. I want to, you know, but I am subject to the word of God, to the spirit of God. If, you know, I sense that, and I think it was Chalmers said, if I sense a sense of conviction in my heart, like, you know what, I'm gonna turn this off. I need to be, you know, obedient to that. You know, it's not because somebody came in and said, you shouldn't be watching this. I'm like, no, you know what? I feel like this is a level of, you know, what God wants me to shift into. Maybe I shouldn't be watching it now because maybe it's okay for me to watch it. But right now, during this time, he's like, no, I don't want you watching that. I want your mind focused. You know, and I'm going to say this one thing about sports. I think Joe hit it on the head. You know, the we thing, right? You know, we won, we're champions, we are this, we are that. I think at the end of the day, when we get caught up in that, there's more nuance to that. It can actually affect you emotionally and mentally, you know, because it's a we thing, right? You know, when you win, you feel great, right? But when you lose, you feel terrible, right? And this has nothing to do with your life. This has nothing to do with ministry, has nothing to do with being a father, a husband, a brother, a sister. But a person can walk around and have a totally bad week because
Right.
their team lost. They can't function because their team lost. And so it can affect you in a way that is uh that is totally unforeseen. And you would think, no, nobody, that doesn't happen to people. No, I've seen it. I've seen people go out and get drunk and act crazy because their team lost.
Yeah,
They were so hurt. You know that you better not call them because their team lost. Because if you call them, you don't know what you're going to get because their team lost last night. So don't talk to them.
Yeah.
And I remember, over the years, I've learned to get by that very quickly. I'm like, that's not me.
Right.
That's the team that I like. That's the team that I follow. I'm a fan of, not that me. Because people are like,
right.
Are you okay? Your team lost. I'm like, I'm already moved on to the next thing. But that has this huge effect when we say we lost.
Yeah.
So I definitely get where you're coming from on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got nothing else, man. I think y'all eating, y'all cooking. That's what the kids will say. You're cooking. So I'm just enjoying it. But we do got a comment though.
Yeah. I am with Brenda here. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Not into sports, but that's a trip because it was never the person's win to begin with. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It was you had nothing to do
with it.
With that.
I wore my lucky socks though, Joe.
Exactly. Exactly. Some of the superstitious nonsense that I've heard in relation to sports is just out of pocket. Look, y'all, if I just want to say, I know I very purposefully knowing that I was gonna kind of probably conceive of some of these things differently than my brothers here. I purposefully came in with that idea of being the guy that was going to stir the pot a little bit. Shocker. I'm the guy who's positioned himself to stir the pot a little bit. So I know I was the voice that vocalized some disagreement with some of the comments and all of that kind of stuff. But again, this is not this whole thing, the whole gimmick behind Let It Rip, like we talked about 2 weeks ago on the pilot. It's communication, it's conversation, it's not knowing exactly where all of this was going to go and all of this kind of stuff. I had a feeling that part of this was going to be don't throw blanket statements out there and talk about your righteousness as if it's everybody else's righteousness and like, oh, you don't have to do this, but I do this. Like, we all know what you're saying. We all understand that you're saying that in order to be actually righteous, you've got to act like me and all of that kind of stuff. I had a feeling that was going to be at least part of the conversation, but guys, I appreciate every single one of you that have engaged with this, that have conversated, that have commented, all of that kind of stuff. Seriously, and I think even though I poked and prod and all of that kind of stuff, I think largely we land on the same points, as far as like where that asterisk is, where that line is, what that means for other people, all of those kinds of things. I guess for me, my closing sentiments as far as all of this goes is, I think about guys like Hector Murray, who is for anybody who is into the faith and fandom space and the folks that are that this is their ministry. He is huge in the space. Love Thy Geek is another group that's huge in this space. Geek Devotions is another one that's huge in this space. Guys that are taking the Geek Preacher, who is who shares the gospel through D&D. That's another one that's really spicy for a lot of people because that was very intrinsically tied to Satanic Panic and all of that kind of stuff. In the same way that I think we still deal with video games because of Columbine and all of that kind of stuff, in music because of that, because there's still those remnants of violence depicted on screen means that it's violence depicted in the individual, and that's doing something to their heart and all of that kind of stuff. I think when you look at the complexities of the human mind, when you look at the complexities of the individual person, we so cannot paint one size fits all as far as all of this stuff goes. And I know that, like, I know for both of you guys mentioned cursing as a thing. If something that's not made like for Christians, by Christians, whatever, has profanity in it and all of that kind of stuff, I'm not going to expect it to play by any kind of playbook. I'm just not. And if just because there's cursing on the TV screen doesn't mean for me, for the individual, for myself, that it's a stumbling block for me. I have come to understand that is a stumbling block for other people. So if it's laden with profanity and all of that kind of stuff, I'm going to pick and choose where I play that, what that happens, whatever, you know what I mean? Like the audience and all of that kind of stuff. Because if I know somebody has a problem with that, I'm not going to play it for them. Like I said, like what you like and don't be a jerk. That's that, you know, that doesn't, that for as much as we've been talking about, don't put other people down for what they, for what they like. Also, don't force your stuff on other people. Like if other people don't dig it, then they don't dig it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to use your example, T, that you brought up with Willie and all of that about Halloween, about horror movie, like that sort of thing. Kino on the Road co-host and member of the network, Andrew, from the Ministry Misfits, and I kind of fell backwards into doing a series called Is It Pagan? Where we go through and talk about holidays and you know, and that's the thesis statement is it pagan. And what our first episode was around Halloween and talking about is celebrating Halloween pagan and all of that, which is a conversation unto itself. But I can appreciate that particular subject matter because I know that's there's such a wide variety of responses to that question. What I care about is accuracy about the topic. That's where I tend to pipe up. If somebody just doesn't like it, like they don't, like that's not something that they necessarily enjoy, they don't dig, whatever, cool. When you start to make spiritual claims that are inaccurate, then my instinct is to say, okay, that's not what that means. That's not what that, like, you know what I mean? And that's where I think the bridge too far is for me sometimes, is this idea of drawing things into the conversation that don't belong in the conversation. All like that to me is separate from asking questions, right? Like I think both of you guys said there's some things that are just meant to enjoy. You can whatever it is, in my opinion. Like for me, I can take whatever the subject matter is and expose it to the light of asking the big questions about it. To me, that's not spiritualizing it. That's just how do I bring my faith into the subject matter and all of that kind of stuff? How do I bring my relationship with God into this subject matter, into this aspect, all of that kind of stuff? To me, that's one thing. Over spiritualizing something because you don't like it or because it puts your heart in a bad spot, that to me is a bridge too far. That to me is going in the wrong direction. And I think for as much as not putting other people down is part of this conversation, I think the other part of the conversation is if your instinct is to put other people down, what does that say about what you conceive of God? What does that say about how you view the character of God? What does that say about your relationship with God? It's not for me to comment on your relationship with God. That's not my job. That's above my pay grade. But being authentic to yourself and being authentic to God, I think you need to start asking those questions. And that you is inclusive, that you is everybody. Because there's generally stuff underneath the surface when it comes to that. Just like for me, there's absolutely stuff under the surface where I do come into this more, my proclivities are more given to a defensive posture as far as all of this goes, because I have heard all of the nonsense. I have heard all of the garbage. I have heard all of the rhetoric about, I'm not lumping everybody who disagrees with me into those or into those categories. I'm talking about the people that sweep with a wide ankle brush, that anybody that does any of this stuff, you're automatically bad, you're automatically in sin, you're automatically wrong. And I think if this is something that, like, developing language for cooperating with people means that you need to take the time and you need to take the intentionality to actually allow for real dialogue to take place and real questions to be asked and real investigation to be happening, because it is so layered, because there are people involved. And when you're casting judgments on people based on subjects, that says something about you. If you're unwilling to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with you, what you're saying, and I would add to that. One of the things that really makes these conversations even possible is that we're conversating about the thing, not about ourselves. And I think, as Joe said earlier, a lot of times we make it one and the same. Like with my football team, that's me. We won, and we're not willing to have the conversation about the thing because somehow we're talking about ourselves, not the thing. Right. And so we're not talking about gaming. We're talking about TC. No, actually, we're trying to have a conversation about gaming, not about TC. Right. We're having a conversation about, rap. I mean, I grew up in the gangster rap era where they were trying to ban, explicit lyrics, explicit content. There was a big political push for it. People were running, for offices off of banning rap because it's corrupting the minds of our children, right? Some of that was true. Some of the stuff that people were listening to, they actually were going out and doing it. They actually were imitating it, right? But the issue was people no longer were talking about the subject matter. They were talking about themselves. They were talking about, but me. You're saying this about me. And I think that's the hardest part in all of this, is that can we have a conversation about this subject matter and not make it about me personally? And I think, and if I can do that, then I can actually have a conversation and see where this other person's coming from, but they got to do the same thing, right? They can't make it about them, and then say, I can't make it about me, right? Because that complicates the conversation. And so I think ultimately, knowing myself, being self-aware of my issues when it comes down to movies, media, music, whatever it is, and then secondly, understanding that I am not the end all be all standard for moral, rightness or wrongness, right? That a person has to actually, as Roman says, be convinced in their own mind, right? They're gonna have to be convinced in their own mind, and I can't take that away from them or give that to them at the end of the day. And I've had to learn that as a pastor, because you know how many people I sit with that are adult people that I can't tell you how to live your life. I'm going to put on the table what the Bible says, what the heartbeat is behind it. Now you got to go decide. Now you got to go live. Right. You have to go make the decision, right? And there are people like, well, Pastor, you going to let them get away with that? Like, wait a minute. Am I the, you know, do I have some like spiritual handcuffs that I can put on people? I got a spiritual prison that I can go, man, I'm all right. We're going to lock you up, you know, because you've been wrong. You know, I got, you know, spiritual timeout for you because you're doing this and you're doing that, right? Ultimately, this is going to be between you and God. My job is to make sure that you understand what the Word of God says. And now you got to go and figure that thing out. You got to go live. You got to go live this thing. And all these nuances that we have talked about today kind of fit into that. You know, your personal conviction. Do I think that this is going to cause somebody else to stumble? Do I care if it's going to cause somebody else to stumble? You know, where am I at on that? And so, yeah, I think this is a powerful conversation that probably needs to be had more often, you know, amongst Christians in settings where people are willing to respectfully chime in and have that conversation.
Right. Brenda's got a couple of comments here. Everyone has their own convictions, and what is okay for me may not be okay for you, or vice versa. Yeah, that's it. You know, yeah. I think it's one of those things that I agree, because that this is a conversation that needs to be had more, because the reality is like I said, whether we like it or not, this says a lot about where we're at and about how we conceive of God and what is possible through passions and through enjoyment and all of that kind of stuff, and how we can convey things and all of that kind of stuff. You know, I think to limit this to one dimension or the other is to limit God and say that he can't cross over and touch into other parts, that it has to be through CCM, it has to be through bad Christian movies and all of that kind of stuff. I've literally never seen a good Christian movie ever once. I've never seen a good Christian movie.
I have.
And yes,
I've seen a couple.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have.
Like I said about people who enjoy Lord of the Rings, it's okay to have bad opinions. But anyway, anything else before we close out?
No,
good to go. Appreciate y'all jumping in.
Thanks, y'all.
Yep. You know what I wish would have happened. I wish Chalmer would have shared about comedy. Years ago. We had this discussion about comedy.
Yeah,
and because Chalmer was a stand-up comic, you know, at one point in time, and so I think that falls into this conversation. But he didn't jump in there with that. He's probably in and out doing things. But I would have loved for him to throw that in there, and maybe that's a conversation we have on its own about humor and what's funny and what's not, and that's a whole conversation in itself.
Well, Joe, that sounds like our next one for next week.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Be a talent trail. That is going.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So tune in next week for us talking about comedy and what is good and what is not. But guys, seriously, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for all of you guys who have commented and chimed in. We appreciate you all. We will be back next week talking about that. There's Chalmer.
And can we bring you on, Chalmer, for that one?
Good day, brother Stephen Baker.
Hey, Pastor Baker. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us. Chalmer, let's figure that out. Getting
sure.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's go.
let's figure that out. We'll have you on next week.
We serious.
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, let's figure that out. But anyway, all right, guys. Remember every Saturday rolling forward, we will be here for another edition of Let It Rip. Guys, if you are unaware, you can find the show streaming every week over at the Kingdom on the Road channel on YouTube. You can also find Ant and I on Fridays. Right now, we're on a little bit of a hiatus from Fridays, but we're going to be kicking back in shortly as far as that goes. Andrew joins us there. Sometimes there's other faces as well. So you can find all of that over at the Kingdom on the Road channel. For those of you guys that are joining from the Buddy Walk community and from Kingdom on the Road, you can find Ant over at Anthony Wilson on YouTube and on Facebook and all of that. You can find T over on YouTube at Pastor TC. What's your Let's Play channel?
My Let's Play. So I only have one channel right now. So I do have a Twitch channel. Okay. My Twitch channel is Pastor TC. So if you're more into Let's Play content along with dialogue like this that you're seeing on the screen, I highly recommend you go check that out. I am a little team on hiatus right now from streaming, but I am constantly posting videos on YouTube, which is Pastor TC, where we talk about God, faith, character development, and how God connects to that in video game characters. So go check it out.
And if this is something that you're passionate about, you can find me circling around this group of folks. You can shoot me a DM. I know I rattled off a bunch of suggestions to content creators that are in this space that are marrying the worlds of faith and fandom. If you want some suggestions for some Christian content as far as that goes, hit me up and I can help you out with that. Until next time, remember two very important things: that you are prayed for and you are loved deeply. Guys, until next week. Peace, y'all.